Solo board gaming night here. And although 2021 was an all around great year for myself when it came to solo board games, there were a few bumps in the road, you could say. This is going to be my list of the most disappointing solo board games of 2021. In my number 4 spot of my most disappointing game of 2021 comes Gargoyles Awakening. This game had so much promise during the unboxing, and it's not a bad game per se, it's just too simplistic for its own good. If you grew up watching DuckTales, Darkwing Duck, Tailspin, Chippendales Rescue Rangers, you'll know who the Gargoyles were. They were a big deal back then. And I really, after unboxing the game, was expecting so much out of this game. But unfortunately, it fell a little bit short. And I'm going to show you why. One thing Gargoyles Awakening has going for it is the component quality and art that is included in this game. You could tell that the people that created this game truly loved the IP and treated it with the absolute respect and love that it deserves. Considering the low price point of this game, the component quality is actually really nice. Everything from the little miniatures to the individual pieces of art on every single card is an absolute joy to look and watch on the table. And once you have everything laid out and all the props and characters set up for a mission, it definitely is a great looking game. It has amazing table presence. So how does a game with so many positives end up being a disappointment? Well, the truth is, it doesn't matter which mission you choose to go on or the objective you have to complete, the game still plays out exactly the same. You move and attack using dice, or you could use cards to deal damage, or you could just use a special attack. Either way, once you find out that the buildings don't even matter, they're kind of just there for show, and no matter the elevation or which side of the building you're on, line of sight does not even exist. Once you figure that out, the game kind of just shows its true simplistic nature, and that's why it's so disappointing. As you can most likely tell, I did not dislike Gargoyles Awakening. It was just a disappointment to me. The simplicity of the game itself, it was just too much. This would be a great game, however, to introduce to newcomers to the board game hobby. That'd be great. This is a perfect starting point, especially if they're a fan of the show. Other than that, I think that the simplistic nature of the gameplay is what held it back from becoming the game that it could have been. And that's why Gargoyles Awakening made it on my most disappointing games of 2021 list. My third most disappointing game of 2021 was Transformers deck building game. This one's kind of a shame because there's a lot of things to like about this game. However, there's a lot of things that actually hold it back. Let me show you why. Following the announcement of Transformers deck building game, my anticipation for it was through the roof. Everything I had seen up until that point, from the detailed art to how colorful it was, the expressions on the Transformers themselves, everything just seemed like it was going to be a home run hit for me. After a few playthroughs, it started to become apparent that it didn't really feel like I was being a Transformer at all. There were vehicle alternate forms, and that was well and all, but it didn't change the fact that I didn't feel like I was a Transformer. Making my way through the Matrix to be able to purchase cards that strengthened my deck was fun, and I enjoyed that part of the game a lot. However, the longer the game went on, the more start of turn and ongoing effects would pop up. It started making the game feel fiddly. I describe it as firecrackers going off. They were everywhere, and it was really hard to keep track of them all. I found the combat to feel very underwhelming. The game mechanic of drawing an ambush or a dominance card only really added to the fiddliness that the game already felt, and it didn't feel satisfying to battle at all, in my opinion. It didn't help that the rulebook did a very poor job explaining the way assists and damage cards function as a game mechanic. The most disappointing part of Transformers, however, will have to come in its replayability. There are only 6 Decepticon bosses to choose from, and you need to have 3 Decepticon bosses in each game. That means in just 2 games, you'd already seen everything the game has to offer. The sad thing is that Transformers is actually really fun. When you're not at a screeching halt due to the start of turn or ongoing effects and the all around fiddliness that occurs in the game, there's actually a lot of fun to be had going around the Matrix, purchasing cards, and building a better deck. It really saddens me to place this game on this list, only because there's a lot of good going for it. However, I believe that the bad outweighs the good, and the fiddliness of the game itself does put a damper on the fun factor and the enjoyment to be had. The next 2 games on this list were really close to each other as far as disappointment goes. But the number 2 spot went to X-Men Mutant Insurrection. This game had so much going for it. It had everything going for it. The looks, the style, it looked great. However, it failed miserably when it came to the execution. Let me show you why. This is minor, but the standees included in Mutant Insurrection were very lifeless. I ended up having to upgrade them using hero clicks just so I can find myself enjoying the game. I did this because while laid out on the table, the game had a very flat, boring look and feel to it. When going on a mission, you could team up, and while that sounds fun on paper, in actuality, it really amounts to nothing more than just switching a character card for another and rolling some few extra die. It also gives you access to an assist ability, but nothing much more than that. Missions were completed by rolling a pool of die depending on which characters afford you which die, along with any training points that you may have, and placing the matching symbol to the mission cards. And that's it. You keep taking on missions, rolling dice, matching symbols, and trying to maintain the threat level low. There is a positive, however, and it's the way the showdowns are handled. I like how you put multiple cards next to each other to form a bigger picture and make it look like you're actually in this epic battle. However, at the end of the day, you're still just rolling dice and matching symbols on the mission card. And that's a shame because I never really felt like I was part of the X-Men. I just felt like I was rolling dice and matching symbols. For being a game based on such a popular IP like the X-Men, it's a shame that it just came down to rolling some dice and completing some missions. Nothing about this game felt X-Men. The pictures looked beautiful, the illustrations were great, but the actual execution of the game itself, none of it at all screamed X-Men, and that's why it was one of the most disappointing games of 2021. The most disappointing game that I ended up playing in 2021 actually released during the tail end of 2020. It didn't show up to my local shop until January of 2021. And that is The Batman Who Laughs Rising. Now, there are good and bad things to be said about this game, but let me show you why I felt that this game was so disappointing. You can't underestimate the table presence that the Batman Who Laughs Rising has. The centerpiece is especially remarkable. The component quality in this game is really high overall. The threat track for the Batman Who Laughs seems kind of menacing on the table. I enjoy the custom dice, they're hefty and very colorful. Even the Batman Who Laughs has his own custom dice. As threat increases on the threat track, Dark Knights are revealed and placed on the board. By matching the hero dice on the cards, you could either defeat or recruit the cards to your team, depending what the situation is. But this is where a big majority of my issues with this game start to creep up. As damage is placed on the Dark Knights, you receive tokens that help you throughout the game. The problem is, if you get terrible rolls and you're not allowed to recruit any heroes, you start finding yourself in a downward spiral. The Batman Who Laughs is relentless in his attacks, constantly defeating heroes on the board, which cause the Dark Knights that are on the threat track to be revealed and placed on the board as well. If you're unlucky with the rolls of the dice, especially during the beginning of the game, you're going to be left defenseless against the relentless attacks of the Batman Who Laughs. It could really become an incredibly difficult and unfair fight. On the other hand, if you get really lucky with your rolls, especially early on, the amount of dice that you could end up rolling every time it's your turn, it ends up feeling really satisfying. However, that's if you get lucky with your rolls. And that's the biggest disappointment. Luck is the main factor of this game, not skill, just luck. The dice that you roll is going to determine how well you do. Skill really has almost nothing to do with anything. As you can see, there are a lot of positives to the Batman Who Laughs Rising, and it actually could have moments that are very enjoyable. It's just that random roll, that luck of the die that's just, it's detrimental to the overall experience, because if you don't have the heroes on your teams, or you don't have enough of those bonus tokens to mitigate the rolls or the dice, this is an uphill battle through and through. And I was expecting so much from this game. I guess maybe my expectations were too high, that ultimately, although there are a lot of fun moments to be had playing this game, it ended up being one of the most disappointing games that I ended up playing in 2021. So that's it. These are my most disappointing games of 2021. I mean, there's not a lot here, and that's mainly due to the fact that I do a lot of research before I open the wallet. But that's not to say that these were bad games. They just weren't as good as I was expecting them to be. There's fun to be had for sure. So if any one of these games seem like fun to you, by all means, go out there and experience them. That's what it's all about. This is an opinion at the end of the day. This was Solo Board Gaming Night. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have a great game night. Take care.